What's going on, guys? Welcome to the next part of the Build a Spotify app series. This is a bit of an unscheduled part. Literally 2 seconds after the end of the last video, I figured out why the image is not going through here. So I wanted to take this video to quickly just patch this up so we don't leave it incomplete. So if that all sounds good, make sure you start by destroying the like button down below, open up Xcode, and let's jump back into the workspace. So the reason that images is nil, and it's kind of silly, of when you go into an album and hit this, is when you get the tracks for a given album, you don't actually get the album artwork back in the tracks itself, because it would be redundant, right? Because you already have an album here. So actually, it doesn't pass back an album here. Notice it's album optional for an audio track. So the simple solution is just mark this as var, and I'm going to click into album. And we're also going to mark the images array, if I can find it, as var. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is, if we go back to the album view controller, at the very bottom here, where we actually go ahead and pass in the array of tracks to our presenter here, we can say that for each of these tracks, we're going to go ahead and add in the album artwork. So we already have the images array that's on the album directly. So I'm going to say images is album.images. And keep in mind, this album is on this view controller. This is the album view controller that actually shows contents of a given album. So that would basically be this controller here. We already have the image. We just need to pass it into each of the tracks. So now that we have the images here, what we can do is we can say for, or we can just say tracks, and we can say for each. And for each of these, we can go ahead and assign the image. So let's go ahead and just see, first of all, what the heck is this yelling at me about? Is it yelling at me because we need to say track in? And for each of these tracks, I'm going to say the album. I wonder if we can just do that. The album is the current album. Let's see if it lets me do that. It might not. Let's see, cannot convert value of type in out audio track to expected argument of audio track. Interesting. So it looks like this is not letting me assign to it. So we want to, oh, it's because we want track.album is what we want. But I want to say this track is immutable, so that is not going to let me do that. So what we want to do now is actually create a copy of this track that is mutable, and we want to mutate each of those. So we are going to say, let's see, what is the best way that we want to do this? So we can say let tracks with album is going to be an array of audio tracks, just like that. And we're going to say tracks dot compact map. And we already have a track. It's $0. So we'll say track is $0. We're going to make this a var. And we can say track.album is self.album. And finally, at the bottom, we'll say return track. And let me see if it lets me do that, since it is a mutable var now. So it should not have a problem with it, hopefully, which it does not. Perfect. So it returns it to this. We can get rid of images, actually. And so our presenter, we're going to return tracks with album. So all this is really doing is taking the track that we have already and just sticking on the current album that this controller holds onto. And that album internally has the image URLs set. So if you go ahead and give this a run, now, if we click into this and hit this, you'll see that it passes in the album artwork appropriately. So all it's really doing is it's taking this, all the referential data of the album, and passing it in. So very silly little mistake on, I guess not really even a mistake. It's kind of by design, where Spotify doesn't give you redundant information back. Because if you click into an album, you get the album already, right? You already have it. There's no point of the API giving you another copy of the album with each of the tracks, which is makes sense, right? It's a simpler API call and it's less data bandwidth needs on the user end. You just need to take that album and just stick it into each of these tracks, since we're using that and assuming on our presenter that it will be available to actually drive the data for this image here. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'll mention is if we go ahead and hit this next button, we notice if you actually played with the app with the audio on, the audio does change. It crashed actually there because there's no next track. The audio does change, but our actual UI doesn't change. So if we're in here, and actually a playlist is a better example. So this is actually another issue right now. So if I click on any of the tracks in an album, it once again does not send in the album. And the reason is because we need to get the track out. We're going to say track.album is going to be self.album. And that's how we're going to get that to work, very similar to what we did down here. So let's go ahead and give that a run. And now when I tap on these, it also has the appropriate album artwork attached to it as expected. But the one thing that I wanted to demo, which is not working, which we're going to fix, is if I tap on this, right, we have our picture and our title. But if I tap next, it should update our title for the song here, as well as the artist and image. And the reason it's not doing that right now is because if you go to presenter, when we tap on next, we basically come into did tap forward, and we have an array, right? So we have an array of tracks here. So what we want to go ahead and do, we have tracks.empty. Let's see. Otherwise, we have this. This is first item. So this is forward. Let's see what's going on here. So I actually think I did this backwards in the last video. That is not good. So if we tap on forward, we want to advance. Otherwise, we want to do this. I actually typed these in the wrong functions, looks like. So this is forward. But once we actually do this, we also want to tell the view controller to refresh with the data source. So we aren't actually holding a reference to the controller at the moment. So what you probably want to do, and what we are going to do, is say self.playerVC is VC. And we're going to do the same thing right down here. We're going to say self.playerVC is VC. And just go ahead and create that VC property on here, which is going to be player VC, which will be the player view controller optional, which looks great. And once we go ahead and go to the next song, we're going to say player VC, and we're going to say refresh. We'll say refresh UI. And we're going to refresh based on the data source that should be assigned to it now. So we're going to go into the player view controller. I'm going to add a single function on here, which we'll add, I guess, right down here. And basically, all we're going to do is we're going to say configure. And configure, if you remember, it takes our data source, if I can find it. It takes our data source and it configures the UI components with it. So let's go ahead and give this a run and let's see what it looks like. Well, firstly, we have a issue here. Let's see why this is yelling at me, because we did if let player. So we want to take that and move that to the forward function here. And we need to copy this if let for first index and move that to the other functions. I'm going to put that there. And this one is going to be the other one. I'm just moving them around. Go ahead and give it a run. We have a player here. You could say player.advance instead of the optional, since we are unwrapping it already. Go ahead and give it a run, and let's see if the UI updates once we actually tap the forward button. So I'm going to start with this playlist. We're going to tap on this song. We're going to hit this forward button, and it looks like it is not updating. So let's see why the heck it's not updating. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to hit we're going to put a breakpoint here, and I'm going to tap on forward, and we're going to make sure that we are getting there. So I tapped on the forward button, and it looks like this is never being called. So let me also go into here and tap on forward. And it looks like it's still, oh, it looks like it is being called because tracks is empty. So that does not appear to be correct. So tracks should not be empty because we passed in an array from the playlist. So let's see what's going on. So we're saying tracks is tracks. We did start playback, which makes sense. Let's see what else could be going on. We are not emptying it out anywhere. So let's go ahead and try that one more time. I'm going to put a breakpoint right here to make sure that we are assigning it. And let's see what else we could potentially be doing wrong. So this is backwards, which we don't care about at the moment. This is forwards. And tracks should not be empty. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right there. We're going to select a playlist, and the reason it's actually empty is because we need to hit this to pass in an array of tracks. That is a good catch, actually, on my part. So let's go ahead and hit the play button. And now when I hit next, you'll notice that it should hit the breakpoint. Hopefully, maybe not. All right, I hit our breakpoints. And let me hit the play button again here. And it should update our actual UI. But for whatever reason, it's not updating our UI. So let's see why that's happening. So we're saying refresh here. And this is going to basically configure. I'm going to put a breakpoint in there to make sure we're actually calling that. And what tends to happen is these shorter videos end up getting pretty long. So let's do that super quick. So I'm going to hit this and I'm going to start hitting forward in just a moment here. And we should eventually hit this refresh UI. And all right, we actually hit refresh UI. And if I go ahead and hit the play button again, we should in fact see our UI being updated with the new data from the data source. It looks like we did updates. I don't know if I just missed it there. It's possible that I did. But it looks like it doesn't update for all of them. So one thing that I also discovered in their API is not every song has a preview URL, which is a little unfortunate because what we do is we are advancing the song, but the data source is being driven by the current track on the presenter. So if our current track is not matching up, it becomes problematic. So there's a couple ways you could fix this. What comes to mind is, just hold an index in here. We can just do that pretty trivially and just give it a try. So we could say index in this case, and what I'm just going to do is return the track at the given index. You can get rid of all of that stuff if you wanted to. And let's see here, we're just unwrapping it. You can ignore that warning for player. And what you could do is when the user taps on forward, you could just increment the actual index before refreshing the UI. So I could say index plus equals 1. And then you would say, refresh the UI. So it would take the next track. You just want to be careful of making sure the index never goes out of bounds for the collection. So let's see if that actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this. We'll hit this, and it should be advancing. So let me go ahead and print this out because indexes are not that difficult, and we're definitely doing something strange here. Let's go ahead and expand this. I'm going to tap on this, and we're going to hit forward. And we're not even getting a print. That's unusual. Okay. So, all right, we got a print that time. Oh, and it did change. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and 3. Looks like it's just changing slowly. Now it started to actually work. I think I know what actually happened. I think when the player first loads, it takes a couple seconds to actually get ready. So if I hit this, we'll see a bunch of failures in here because we're waiting on the audio. But let's go ahead and actually see. It looks like something is blocking the main thread because it does get pretty slow. And you can see there that it actually loaded in the album artwork a little bit after the player actually started. If we go ahead and hit the forward button, you'll see that nothing gets printed out, but it does after a second or two after we tap it. So this is a performance and threading issue. I might come back to this. I might not. I have not decided yet. The reason it flashes blue between the images is because we have the image view set to be blue. So let's go back to our player view controller and just change the background color. Let's see where we set it. We set it right here in our image view. Just get rid of that and it won't flash blue anymore. But it looks like for the most part, our player and our playlist logic is working. So if I come into here, let's say I go into country music and let me find a nice playlist. We'll say country covers, cool. And let's go ahead and play this song. You can go ahead and play. You've got volume, forward and backwards. Now, forward and backwards doesn't actually work when you just come in from a single song. That might be a good challenge for you guys to take on of if you're coming into the presenter via a playlist, you want to be able to pass in the previous and next song. The other thing that we haven't done here is in the Spotify app, you can swipe horizontally between different tracks. That would be using the paging view controller horizontally to do that. We're not going to build that out here since it's a little out of scope. I think it's going to take quite a few more videos, so we'll just leave it at that. But if we do go to that, let me go ahead and run this again to get rid of that blue background. If we go ahead and actually do try to play a full playlist, we should be able to go to the next and prior tracks. So let me select one of these featured playlists here. Let's do lounge. Why not? Let's go ahead and hit the play button. There is our track. There is our image. We're going to hit next here. And we're going to wait for our print. It looks like it's a little slow. I actually don't know if I even tapped it. But once you go ahead and tap it, it should go and switch. It's just a little slow. And then it seems like once you tap it for the first time, then it actually does go and get much quicker. Looks like previous is crashing at the moment because we're just trying to go to a track that's out of bounds. I'm going to leave that as is to continue along the series. I think this is a really good area for people to go and figure out how to do various things in the app with the player. Plus, this adds a lot more complexity. So we'll probably cap it here. In the next few videos, what we're going to focus on is instead of just playback, what we'll do is we're going to see how to create your custom playlists for your library, how to save albums, and all of that good stuff. And then I don't think we actually even hooked up logging out yet. So if we go to settings and hit this sign out button, nothing actually happens. So maybe we'll actually do this in the next video. I have not decided yet, but anyways, make sure you like the video, drop a comment down below if you have any questions, feedback, concerns, and definitely subscribe to the channel to stick around for more daily uploads. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.